Good afternoon to the reviewer. So my name is Aqilah YAACOB, and I'm doing this research with my colleague, Dr. Gan Jending. So we are both from Taylor's University, Malaysia. So the topic of this research is titled Social Entrepreneurial Intention, and it is a cross-cultural comparison between UK and Malaysia. So this is the slide where I will be explaining about the research gap. So the first research gap for this research is we identify that most comparative studies have done on entrepreneurial intention, and they look at this entrepreneurship in general, and it is limited. Some of the studies are limited to students' population. Therefore, we are filling up the gap where the current research that we are doing now is examining entrepreneurial intention, but in a different context, which is related to social entrepreneurship. So as you can see here. And the second gap that we have identified is there are many comparative studies out there, but they have done it on entrepreneurial intention, but within the European countries and also African countries. However, the current study that we are doing now is, like I mentioned just now, it is in the context of social entrepreneurial intention, but it is in the context of both developed and also developing countries. So the developed countries here is the UK, as well as the developing countries, which is Malaysia. So we fulfill the gap where past studies have often looked at European countries. So for example, they compared between Germany and UK or between African countries itself. So the third gap that we saw is, first of all, there are only few comparative studies in relation to social entrepreneurship context. When there was this research in the context of social entrepreneurship, they have done it, but they have done it in Asian countries. So for example, they compare between Taiwanese and Hong Kong. However, both are from Asian countries, which we can see that they share the similar value. So the authors suggested that there should be more cross-cultural studies. Therefore, this is why we are looking at cross-cultural comparison between the developing country and also developed country. Even though there are many studies that look, however, there are many studies in the context of social entrepreneurship. However, it's not a comparative study. So they are just looking at one particular countries. And when they look at the particular countries, usually they look at the developed and European countries. So these findings were suggested by the Systematic Literature Review by Bansal et al. 2019. Therefore, we are fulfilling another gap, which is we are doing a comparative studies in a cross-cultural setting, which is a comparison between European and also Asian culture. Okay, so let's move on to the fourth gap. So the Systematic Literature Review suggested by Van Leeuwenberg et al., which is quite recent, 2020, they suggested that future studies should focus on the quantitative research method. As the author said that 60% of the papers on social entrepreneurship are done using qualitative methods. Okay, so we are fulfilling another gap where the current study is looking at comparative studies on social entrepreneurship intention, like I mentioned just now, in a cross-cultural setting, European versus Asian culture, using quantitative method survey, which is survey. Lastly, we would like to highlight that most non-comparative studies on social entrepreneurship, they focus on individual perceptions and attitude. However, the current study is focusing more on individual awareness of social problems, such as social vision, and their personality traits, such as social innovation, where I will explain later on. So not only we are examining these individual personal factors, but we are also looking at the institutional external factors within the same framework. So we are looking at both from the personal factors as well as the external factors. So we are adding the adding mediator and moderator to explain the phenomena. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So the next slide will just tell you the research objectives. So basically, I've explained most of it, where we are doing a comparative studies between developed and developing countries and examine the differences between the European culture and also Asian culture in the context of social entrepreneurship. Why we are looking at this, like I mentioned just now, we want to see the difference in terms of culture. And also we want to look at social entrepreneurship per se, because there's very limited studies that looking at social entrepreneurship, and we believe that social entrepreneurship are growing, and social entrepreneurship are different from commercial entrepreneurship, because social entrepreneurship focuses on solving a social mission at the same time generate profit. So that's why a different context is important. So we also want to investigate not only the internal factors, but also the external factors that could influence social entrepreneurial intention among the general population, not just limited to students in the UK and Malaysia. So we are aiming to collect 400 surveys. Currently, we have already collected 250. So we have a few more to collect before we can start data analyzing. And we have done it. We have collected the data using self-administered questionnaire, and we're going to use statistical analysis such as structural equation modeling. So this is the theoretical framework, like I said just now. We will be looking at the individual factors as well as the external factors, which will be the mediator. So once they have individuals have the social vision and they have the social innovation orientation, they will have the intention to become social entrepreneur, but this is mediated by the institutional environment, which is measured through two dimensions, which is regulatory environment and also normative environment. On top of that, besides the mediator, to explain the phenomena, we want to add the moderator variable to explain the differences in terms of individual cultural values between UK and Malaysia, so that we can measure the difference culture, European and Asian culture, using the famous Hofstede cultural studies, using the five dimension mentioned here. So these are the signs that we are expecting. So we are expecting a positive relationship. So if they have social vision and they have strong support from the environment, like regulatory environment and also normative environment, they will have the social entrepreneur intention. The same goes as if they have the social innovation orientation, they will also have the intention to become social entrepreneurs, given that they are being supported by the institutional environment. And these findings or this relationship will be moderated by the individual cultural values depending on which country they are from, whether they are from the UK or from Malaysia. So these are some of the research contribution. This is the first study that examined a cross-cultural comparison between UK and Malaysia in the context of social entrepreneurship. So the contribution is confirmation of the theory of using social vision and social innovation, but we are confirming the theory in a new context, and we are also addressing the gap on the limited studies on cross-cultural comparison, especially between developed and developing countries and European and Asian culture on account of cultural differences. Besides that, we further explain the phenomena by introducing the mediators as well as the moderators. So through this thorough understandings of factors that could influence social entrepreneurship intention among the general population are vital as the social issues problems are increasing, especially during the pandemic. Therefore, social enterprises are needed more than ever. So we need to know what could influence social entrepreneur intention, such as social vision and social innovation, so that we can really focus on enhancing that variables. And the findings from this research will also shed lights on the individual's intention and readiness to participate in social entrepreneurship, not just in the developing countries, but also not just in the developed countries, but also in the developing countries. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.